Hello and welcome to Inside Rockets, the official podcast of City of Birmingham Rockets Basketball Club. Over the course of the next few weeks, we'll be speaking to some of the most influential people here at the club, starting with founder and managing director Robert Palmer. Before we get into the interview with Rob, here's a roundup of the latest news from around the club. Our women's first team recorded their first victory of the season on Sunday afternoon, overcoming Derbyshire Diamonds 62-58. Meanwhile, Rockets are launching a new central venue league offering organised basketball to under 17 players in the region. For more details, check our website. And finally, our game against Northamptonshire Titans at Utility Arena, Birmingham is set for Sunday, 30th of January. Tickets will cover both BBL Cup finals as well as our game, with tickets available for £12 at cobrockets.co.uk. I'm joined now by Rob. We'll be discussing the formation of Rockets back in 2003, the involvement of Hakeem Olajuwon, what's next for the club, and a whole lot more. Let's go right back to the start now in terms of, obviously, as well as being managing director, you're founder as well of the club. Talk us through that in terms of what made you think this is what the city needs and this is something that you could provide. What was the sort of tipping point for you with that?
Well, what happened there, Tom, is I went into a role with the City Council, which was a funded role through what was a scheme called Active Sports at the time, which was Sport England funded activity. So the city had a rugby coordinator, it had a netball coordinator, it had a hockey coordinator, and then the basketball coordinator's role came up, which I applied for. I was a freelance coach at the time, coaching at college, I was coaching at university, I was doing some schools coaching, but I didn't have a block of set hours, if you like, office-based, administrational-based hours. So when that role came along, it was something I thought I need to look at this for my own security, and fortunate enough to be successful when I applied for that post. And really, the remit on it was to increase participation in the sport across the city. The old Birmingham Bullets franchise, which was the main player in basketball really in the city for many years, had just gone and disappeared really and gone into liquidation. So there was nothing more going on for kids to get involved with through them. So the opportunity, as we saw it, was okay. Let's put a few sites up around the city. The funding was aimed at under 14, so it was mainly years 8s and 9s. But we started off with putting some mainly Saturday morning activity on at 5 or 6 sites around Birmingham. And at the same time, Nietzsche's had not long been built, the sports centre there. So the remit there was really, can you get some activity going in this centre? So after a few weeks of activity around, all around Birmingham, what was pretty obvious in looking there was that there was some amazing talent and the kids wanted to play more, but had nowhere to do it. So we set up a site in central Birmingham at Nietzsche's. We ran it as a central venue league, so kids were invited to come along either on their own or in teams. And again, before you know it, we were just amazed by the numbers. These are, again, 13, 14-year-old kids. We were getting 60, 70 on a Saturday morning, almost instantly. And that was a bit of a light bulb moment for me, and wow, there really is an interest from kids here for our sport. What do we do to give them a great experience? What do we do, to ensure that we don't just attract new members, but we retain participants as well? So on the back of that, we set up a couple of teams that we entered into the National League. That was under 13, under 14 teams. Put them into competition. I think I coached one of the teams, one of the other coaches coached another team. And that's really how the club was born. It was City of Birmingham Active Sports, I think, was the name that we put them under, and the funding for the project was legitimately used at the top end as kind of the talent type base money for the kids that were maybe just had shown a little bit more ability and were ready and willing and wanted to get involved in playing games. And that's how it started. On the back of that, year on year, we'd hold trials in the summer. We were getting hundreds of kids turning up to trials, so that gave us a chance to put more teams in, more practice sessions. Before we knew it, within 3 or 4 years, there were maybe 7 or 8 teams operating, and it was already even by 2007, 2008, it was getting harder and harder to manage. I was still working at the city council then, so I could, I guess I could allocate some of my time for my involvement in that, although I had other projects to get on with as well. But the biggest challenge was, how do we get consistency across the board when we've got all this activity going on? We've got all these kids coming in from different backgrounds, some unbelievable talent, and enthusiasm and commitment. But I think slowly then again, probably going through to 2010, 2011, what we'd really recognised was that the size of the club had outgrown its original structures. So again, then we thought we need to do something about this. I've got some really good people working with us and alongside us. Some that had helped me with the actual initial setting up of the organisation as well. A couple of guys involved in that were supportive. Steve Ellis was a guy who was a teacher, a partnership development manager at King Edward's Aston at the time. He was a high-level referee, refereeing in the British Basketball League as well. So he helped us write a couple of funding bids to support us financially as well. Always be indebted to that. There were other coaches that came to the fore. Herman Wilson was around. He kind of helped with the initial conception and setup of the organisation as well. Some of the ideas there. So we kind of reached that point by then where things had evolved, and we felt, okay, this needs to be probably a little bit better structured at this point. So we turned then from, we were a voluntary organisation. We'd got people schools coming to us. Can you offer us a coach here and there? Of course, that's a different revenue stream. It was at that time, it was okay. And I don't know how do we service this, but how do we make that into a credible revenue stream as well? So there was a demand on that. There was a demand on, could you run a camp at half term? So we get bits and bobs of funding to put stuff on, Tom. But it reached a point then, we've got to do this better than how it's being run, in a more organised and structured manner, so we get a consistent delivery. We had got some, and to this day we have some amazing volunteers and coaches that put so much time into it, and I've never ceased to be amazed by people prepared to put time into supporting what we do, which is really enriching for me. But I was also aware they probably weren't getting the support back and the guidance that we wanted to give them to. So at that point we registered the company as a community interest company. I'd got a coach that I'd managed to drag in, a guy called Kurt Dawes. I'd known from my younger playing days, and he was a police officer. Kurt brought his son down to play with us, so I managed to drag him in as a coach and then onto the board to chair the board. And then we got another parent, a guy by the name of Bill Heaps, that was an ex-banker, but very knowledgeable around and working on like business coaching, people coaching, mentoring type activities. His son played with us as well, and he recognised the good that it was doing around the kids that he saw. So the three of us set up as directors, and that was the beginning of the I guess of the new era really. That was in 2012 by the time we got everything signed off. And we ran anything that was maybe going to make a surplus through that CIC and ploughed it back into the organisation. And the voluntary organisation and the teams kept on running alongside that at the same time, really. So yeah, that was by that stage in 2012, maybe 10 teams. We probably got 150, 280 kids on the programme in total. And we were just starting to build a reasonably healthy community programme as well.
Yeah, I mean, you've mentioned Kirk and obviously Jordan. They're both still involved with the club. What is it about the club that, obviously they're not the only examples, what is it that keeps people coming back and keeping people involved?
I'd like to think there's an environment and the culture that's created, Tom. We are very keen that we treat young people as people and treat them with respect, speak to them properly, but the flip of that is that, we would ask them to behave, reasonably and responsibly back. So we never, we never put, or initially we've never put hard and fast rules in that you have to behave this way. We have a set of guidelines and expectations that we ask for everybody in the club. But, I think they're playing a sport that they love. That's the first thing. And the fact that they're making that commitment to travel from all around the city to play with people from different backgrounds than themselves says an awful lot about their desire to play. We try to teach them a set of principles that we hope then they take into their, the rest of their lives. And the feedback from the parents and the families is the difference that playing the sport with us at the club and the support that they get has made on their lives is very positive. So, that will be some formal mentoring at times, some informal mentoring. It'll be liaising with the schools when necessary to make sure that the academic side of things is on track. Constant conversations with the families. And the biggest, probably the biggest boost for me, if you like, or warm feeling, is when we get kids that are coming back years later that you haven't seen, that have maybe gone on to be positive members of their community in responsible jobs, have been off to university and have come back and still want to be involved in the club at that time. I think that for me is the best part of what we do. How many of the players will make professional basketball players or reach realise their full potential? We hope many, but there'll be a lot more that don't, that go on to other things in life. And just trying to create that environment and encouraging our coaches to treat the people as human beings, and we're not there to yell at them, we're not there to shout at them, we're not there as I guess on a power trip. You're there to try and nurture the young people into the next part of their lives, and as I said, realise their full potential on and off the court, really.
And speaking of people who are obviously involved with the club, we've obviously got quite an established board of directors from different areas of expertise across the board. What was the sort of process like from you, obviously, as you say, going from a voluntary organisation to getting people of this sort of level of expertise involved?
Well, that started, again, Tom, probably, we had one particular board member that was a sponsor and would sponsor us year in, year out. And again, that contact, as many of them do, came from a parent who loved what was going on for her son. She worked somewhere and she'd spoken to the boss and said, look, is there anything you can do to support these guys? Because they don't have a great revenue streams, which we didn't. But they're making a difference on the young people across the city. And that particular guy then sponsored us for, didn't want any kind of profiling on that, but sponsored us by financially supported us for probably 4, 5, 6 years. In fact, even to this day, he still gives us contributions. We then sat down, as we used to do every year, with him and say, look, this is what's been going on. And he'd usually say, well, I can support you this much this year. And then the one year, we sat down and he said, look, my circumstances have changed a little bit. It's not going to be a financial contribution I'm going to give you, but I'm going to give you my time and support, because I think that in the long term, trying to get you self-sustainable is more important than me maybe underpinning you with a bit of finance. Now, at the time, obviously, you're thinking, oh gosh, okay, well, we're not getting any money off of this year. That's the natural reaction, but you know what? It was the best thing that could have happened to us. So that was the first kind of, if you like, support from outside of the club that we took on. And in an advisory capacity, that guy then became one of our, if you like, our first guy on our advisory board. We'd then been put in touch with somebody else at a high-profile company in the city. He's an ex-basketball player, was a global CEO. He'd heard about what we did, wanted to see just how he could support in his way. So, again, went to meet with David at the time, and David joined our advisory board, and he said, look, I'm not sure what my skill sets are that are going to help you here, but I'm sure there's things I can do. and help guide you in some decisions. And it was a lot of the board came together like that. And initially, it was almost giving myself and more than anybody, and Kirk a little bit, just some guidance and backdrop to bounce ideas off before we made some of the bigger decisions. So then, I think then David then was aware through his business contacts of an accountant or a partner at Deloitte that was looking for some kind of I guess some project from a community aspect point of view, and we ticked the box on that. So Liz came along from Deloitte again, bringing loads of expertise around for the financial world. So we got a legal bod in David. We got a financial expert, high profile in Liz. We got Roger, whose expertise was around entrepreneurialism, but also very much around social support and local community, the inner city communities and how we could help and support them. Then I'd got another phone call from a guy who was involved in the West Midlands area to say, look, the CEO of the Chamber of Commerce, at the time, Paul Faulkner, who was the ex-CEO at Aston Villa and Cleveland Browns actually before he came back to the UK. I spoke to him. He'd love to get involved. David knew him through the circles. So Paul came in, and Paul's a blue sky thinker, knows the business world. So straight away, that was a great connection for us, loads of positive ideas. So he joined there. And that was kind of how that came together. And then from another member of the board, we got an ex-deputy editor of the Birmingham Mail. So from a media and journalism point of view, Stacey joined us. The contacts and knowledge that he's got around the media are kind of probably second to none in the city. So before you knew it, we think we got a board that most Premier League football teams in the country would be proud to have, in terms of prestige, but also in terms of what they do for us as well, their action. So a great set of people. They now sit as non-executive directors on the board. And there's 3 executive directors, myself, Kirk, the chair, and then Hakeem Olajuwon. That's another story in itself.
Exactly. I mean, I've got to ask you about this one. I mean, how does one of the best NBA players in the history of the game, the only player Michael Jordan supposedly ever feared, how does he get involved with a sort of startup basketball club in the middle of Birmingham?
Well, this is it's a nice story. 2015, November time, if I remember rightly, I got a phone call out of the blue from one of our volunteer coaches, Raj. My wife's at work, and you never guess who's just walked in. I was like, no, Raj, I wouldn't guess. Hakeem Olajuwon. So what had happened is Hakeem had arrived in the UK. His daughter was studying at the University of Birmingham. I'm guessing he'd walked into this. I think it's a kind of legal immigration solicitors on the Stratford Road. I presume he was asking about his visa. I'm guessing, and one of the questions was, well, what are you going to do while you're here in the UK? I want to set up some kind of basketball academy. I'm a player from the US. And I think then obviously he's told her his name. She's found her husband who's gone running down to go and see him. And Raj said, look, you must ring Rob. We've got this going on already. You must ring Rob and let's see, if there's anything you can get involved with there. And that's how it started. And Hakeem, I met up with Hakeem. He tried, when I eventually rung him, because I really didn't believe it for a while, in all honesty. It took me a few days, 2 or 3 days to comprehend this is real. When I rang him, I've been waiting for your call. Can we meet up? So Kirk and I went to meet him over in Knowle, a hotel in Knowle. And he drives up, he gets out of his car, and he gets up and he gets up and he keeps getting up, and suddenly you got this 6'11" guy coming out of the car. How you doing, guys? most humble, lovely man you could wish to meet, Tom. And what really struck me was that we were obviously there. You're naturally in awe of the guy and what he's done. I used to watch him as a kid playing and the levels he played at, and just unbelievable. Like you say, one of the greatest players that's ever played the game. And he was more interested in what we did. Yes, he'd answer questions if you asked him, but really his interest was about what we got going on. So he'd obviously mentioned he'd got 5 boys that had never picked a ball up at that stage. So I think they were aged between 5 and 10 at that time. So what we always do with people is, look, we can show you stuff on our website, we can tell you what's going on, but come and see it. So along he came. I think it was a Saturday morning that he came along to. And he's like, wow, I can't believe this. There's loads of kids in here. I was like, well, you know what? Come back on Monday night. Let's show you again. We've not staged this for you or anything like that. Back he came again. And at that point, I want to get my boys involved. And I want them to get the bug. I want them to pick that up. I want them to find their love for the sport. Got one boy in particular that loved playing football. And he said, look, I'm not going to take him away from that. He has to find the passion himself. And they started coming down and to our kind of our introductory sessions, the Saturday morning sessions that we still run now. And you could see the natural aptitude for the game that they had. And what was really funny about that was you got some of these other kids that were beginners that Hakeem would pop onto court to and start to help. We've got no idea who he was. You've got one of the greatest players ever to play the game, coaching them, and they got no idea. And yeah, so that was the start of that relationship, really. He loved what he saw. He grew in love with the club, wants to be a part of it. He asked the questions, what can I do? What do you want to do? What can I do to help here in small ways? And we spoke about our own academy scenario. We spoke about our international summer camps as our first 2 kind of bigger projects. And straight away he said, yep, we can do that. And he helped us get them set up, really. And it wasn't so much, there's a load of cash, go and work with it. That's never happened. But to be able to utilise the brand and the name of Hakeem has really, really, that really helped us move from where we were to that next level, really.
And I mean, personally for you, it must be so gratifying to see Hakeem not just take an interest and want to dump his kids off on a Saturday morning, but to really want to be involved and to put his name to things within the club.
You've got to pinch yourself sometimes, Tom, really, to that you can take that for granted, Hakeem's here, and blah, 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 but it's a 1 in a million, really, almost. What in comparison we sometimes make to people that don't understand the game or know the game, can we pick a footballer from that era of that stature that'll be involved with initially a grassroots football team? You might say someone like Johan Cruyff or Diego Maradona, that kind of ilk. It's hard to comprehend for people to comprehend, and sometimes because you see him there, he's there. Especially in the early days, he was there 2 or 3 times a week. After a while, it's like, can you take this for granted, or how do we involve him? What can we ask him to do? But gratifying massively to have the support of him and almost him. He speaks so positively about the club, endorsing it, that it's that's something of huge pride, really. Again, I'm sure it'll probably be many years before I actually sit back and reflect and understand how big that is and has been. But amazing part of my, for me, a part of my career of doing all of this. There's been such rewarding moments along the way, but just having him involved, is probably as big as it comes.
I mean, former Houston Rockets player, of course. Let's talk about our own sort of rebranding as the Rockets. I mean, what sort of undertaking did that take for you and for the whole organisation to sort of almost rip up everything that you've started and rebrand it into the club we have now? Well,
you know what, we were for many years, COB was how everyone knew us. Now, as that went on, until we got to that point where maybe we said, right, we've got to think of this got to think of the business side of this now. and a branding side of it. COB, to those that knew us, was COB, City of Birmingham. Outside of those circles, it didn't mean anything to anybody. Now, obviously, there's Kirk and Hot Eye, because we've been involved. Kirk was involved with us from 2007, 2003. I'd set things up. You have got that emotional attachment to your brand, COB. And first of all, it's like we used to say about what could we do with the name. My initial, thought was, do we need to do this or not? But then I'm a true believer that things need to evolve, and we can't get too attached. And it's much bigger than my ego or me wanting to be attached to a brand. We're a much bigger organisation, and that this is a club that belongs to the players, it belongs to the staff, it belongs to the volunteers. I just see myself as in a position where I can help guide that along the way, really. But bringing a tagline to it just kind of seemed to be a natural development at the stage we'd reached. We spoke about several names, and then the more and more we thought about Rockets, there's an alignment to Euston. Do we have a connection with Euston directly? No, but we do have an NBA legend. We'd be daft not to try and explore that possibility. So was it difficult? Eventually, no. The transition period was pretty swift. Change of name, getting that branding out there, a bit of an exercise to launch that. But everybody bought into it really quickly. And it's made the branding side of things, go through the roof, in all honesty, Tom. Whereas COB was quite hard as a brand to sell. Yeah, we'd have a logo. And COB, but it meant nothing more than that to people. Whereas the Rockets logo now and the brand and what you can do with that brand, there's just so much more scope for it. Big transition. Was it 2017? Actually, I think we didn't do that until it cemented the partnership with Akeem, no doubt. But more than that, I think it's cementing its place in the city now as well. The name Birmingham Rockets is now synonymous with basketball in the city to most kids in every school and anyone that's involved in basketball. So really pleased we took that step, and I think there's much more within that brand to come as well.
And in terms of, obviously, the wider growth of the club, I mean, Hakeem rebranding, going from, as you say, starting up a small club where kids could come and get involved. If you had to sort of sum up that journey in a couple of minutes, how would you do that?
A couple of minutes. Look, the journey's been incredible, but the journey's ongoing. So obviously we've added the first teams to the programme. We've actually added them in 4 or 5 years ago, but we utilised them initially as probably an opportunity for our junior players to get more experience. Now, really where we've decided that's going to go is, number one, we want to put something aspirational on for the young players. So a high level of play and a big game night that they can touch, they can feel and get excited about. But also something for the city to follow too. And so that's been a lot of the work this year in trying to raise the profile, give our existing audience opportunities to see a reasonable level of basketball, but also attract a new audience in and develop a following for us. On the men's and the women's now, at the moment, really this year is all about establishing ourselves at those levels. And there's been some highs, there's been some lows, but over the moon that we're getting 250 people a game as a minimum, which has already caused us some headaches looking forward, but they're very good headaches to have as part of our growth. What that really has shown us is there is a demand for this. There's an interest in it, and that really helps us putting together our thoughts for the future. So we've got some, there are some big plans moving forward. We're always evolving. We've got foundation blocks, and setting the next blocks. We're not here for the short term. We never have been. We've not got short term goals. We've got long term goals. We're not here to win a few games for a season and then go, then disappear. We're not. We're here to do it the right way. We're here to treat kids properly. We're here to treat the rest of the basketball community properly. But we're also here to grow the game. And we believe we've got a sustainable model in place. We've attracted good sponsors this year, good support, good people. And like I said, there's lots more to come. There's lots more we have planned moving forward in our growth and making the game night experience even better, getting the product on the floor even better. But we're not going to do that at the detriment of what we already have.